Red Deer teacher Darren Lund filed a complaint with the Alberta Human Rights Commission. 5 years and tens of thousands of dollars in legal fees later, Stephen Busan was found guilty. His reputation has been sullied, and his financial stability has been undermined as a result of this infringement of his basic rights, made possible by hate crimes laws.
The problem with the use of human rights laws to try to enforce a politically correct view of the world is that anyone that disagrees with someone on a political subject will immediately complain about them to a Human Rights Commission in order to silence the debate.
And when the battle gets really thick and it drags on for years, and even some Christians are questioning you start to question yourself, you start to get angry, with God, and things aren't going your way, and then you're found guilty. My goodness, poor me. But the reality is the self-assessment that I've done through that, and the having to truly depend on God, not what God can do for me financially, or not what God can, is He going to win for me, just depend on Him, and having to sit back as a Christian and say, God, regardless of whether I'm found guilty, regardless of whether people like me, I'm going to hold true to your word. Regardless of the mistakes I make, my ups and downs in life, I am going to continue to hold true to your word and stand strong. And that's what I'm going to continue to do.
What happened to Stephen Busan may be shocking, but closer to home, a group of Christians found that the very act of sharing a biblical message in public can get you arrested and prosecuted in the United States. This is the case where two 75-year-old grandmothers face the very real possibility of spending the rest of their lives in prison. And a young man was vilified by the media for his message of hope to those caught in the grip of homosexuality. They are part of a group better known as the Philadelphia 11. That and more when we come back.
Every year in Philadelphia, they have a celebration of homosexuality. It's called Outfest. It's a taxpayer-funded event where thousands of people come into the streets of Philadelphia to celebrate their homosexuality. So as Christians, we believe that there needs to be a response to a public celebration of sin, such as Outfest. So our ministry went to Outfest. There were 11 of us in total, and ultimately we had been arrested for singing Blessed Be the Name of the Lord at this event, because we were directed out of the event, and we believed that we had the right to be in the public square just as everyone else. What they do is they set up a stage here on the corner of 13th and Locust where this traffic is coming out, and basically on this stage there's a lot of open lewdness that takes place, a lot of very disturbing things that do take place in front of children, and we were actually entering to the event through this sidewalk here. Right here at this intersection of 13th and Locust, we were blocked by a group of homosexuals who actually linked arms to prevent us from coming into the event.
This is a public street. You go where you want.
All right, thank you, officer. This here is obstruction. When they have the signs and trying to block us, and their intent, as they said in the Philadelphia Gay News, is to have us block our message blocked.
If you feel that way, I think you can seek relief through injunctive relief or through the courts.
As I was speaking with him and encouraging him to do something about these whistles that were being blown at us, and they had big pieces of styrofoam that were cut out in the form of angels. And they began to block us with these styrofoam boards so no one can see us.
So when they have their pink signs around us, did you give them the same message?
They're getting ready to get rid of their signs.
But you didn't tell them that they had to get their signs out of here.
11 Christians were arrested that day, including 2 grandmothers. The group became known nationwide as the Philadelphia 11. And they would soon learn that sharing the gospel in public in Philadelphia was considered a hate crime.
Kept taking our pictures and fingerprints, and it was, the longer we were being held, I realized that we weren't getting out right away.
We were charged with 3 felonies and 5 misdemeanors, which could have put us away for 47 years in jail and $90,000 in fines each.
It was totally surreal. I mean, I just couldn't believe. It just seemed like unreal, the whole thing. But then to be charged with ethnic discrimination, I mean, this is absolutely absurd.
Well, the hate crime legislation is going to do away with our freedom of speech. And it's the churches don't realize it, but it's not going to just be for us who go out in the street and take a stand against it, but it's going to affect the churches.
This is, we believe, probably the first time, if not the only time, anybody has been charged with a hate crime where the instrument of the hate crime is, at least incidentally, a Bible. The whole movement towards creating national statewide hate crimes laws and national hate crimes laws is a really scary movement in this country. And anybody who has any belief in the First Amendment or even the things that made this country great ought to be really scared about this.
You know, it strengthens your faith in the Lord and what He can do for you. And we are going to face persecution. That's promised.
God has called us to love them, and we are there with the message of love, and that is that there is hope and freedom through Jesus Christ, that they can be set free from their sins. And that was what we were there to do. Nothing more, nothing less.
The case of the Philadelphia 11 is a chilling precursor to what we could face if hate crimes legislation is allowed to become the law of the land. A crime is a crime, but we're heading down a road where someone's perception about your motivations and deeply held convictions may get you arrested. Did you know that under these laws, the punishment would be greater for an assault on a 22-year-old homosexual man than for the same kind of an assault on an 85-year-old woman? Tristan Emanuel is the author of Christophobia, the real reason behind hate crime legislation. I had a chance to sit down with him to discuss this very important topic.
I think since the 60s, the church in Canada has been quite silent, predominantly on the issue of human sexuality. I haven't talked about it a lot, and when we do talk about it, we tend to talk about it in terms of protest, because we see what's happened in our culture. But having said that, it still has a chilling effect, because what already was a difficult situation where very few pastors were willing to speak, now that's just reinforced the fact that not only is it maybe not what I want to talk about, but it could get me into a lot of legal hot water as a result of being victimized by a law under the guise that this is promoting hatred through speech. And so most pastors don't want to spend time in the court. They don't want to be criminalized for basically sharing the love of Jesus Christ. And so we completely shy away from that legitimate avenue of discussion, morality, because it's now become politicized. It's politicized speech.
Then my sense is that that makes what's happening to the church, capital C, universal in Canada, even more threatening, because if they were silent pre the passage of this legislation, this will do nothing but further a chilling effect, which will silence pastors even more. The end result of that is you have a lackadaisical church. You've got the church in many respects at Laodicea.
Right. We have compartmentalized where the gospel is allowed to go. That's what we've done. We've embraced the constraints of political correctness, and as it were, imposed that upon the gospel, so that we're prepared to preach the gospel in the private sphere, and we're prepared to preach the gospel and share the good aspects of the gospel to everybody, but we shy away from the comprehensive nature of the gospel. What I'm getting at is the gospel doesn't make sense if you don't establish the context for the gospel, i.e. sin and repentance. And there simply are things that people do that need to be repented of. And though it may be politically incorrect to say it, it needs to be said. Otherwise, the antidote, which is Jesus, doesn't make sense. I mean, fine, absolute free speech can sound pretty harsh. From a Christian perspective, my concern is the whole idea behind the First Amendment was that no government should have the right to bind my conscience, nor the conscience of another individual. No government should have the right to decree doctrinal issues or to hem in issues as profound as human morality and marginalize what is essential for our foundation as a free and open society. We need morality in order to be free, and we need to have people to have the freedom to promote morality in the public square. Laws shouldn't be based on personal indiscretions. Laws should not be based on people's personal scruples or what they feel is odious. Laws need to be based on something much more tangible, much more absolute than just arbitrary opinion, even if that opinion happens to be representative of a lot of people.